Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar, brought to you by Techstrong, AWS, and JFrog. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning. We have an exciting presentation ahead of us, but first, I have just a couple of housekeeping notes. First, today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of our discussion, or you'd like to rewatch or share, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude today. If you have any questions, we want you to send those in using the Q&A tab. And to engage with your fellow audience members, you'll find the chat tab right next to it. Finally, at the conclusion of our webinar, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around. Our topic today is Modernize when you migrate, how your DevOps can leap ahead as you move to the cloud. And I'm joined today by Bill Manning, Solutions Engineering Manager at JFrog, and Junaid Kapadia, Senior Startup Solution Architect at AWS. Bill and Junaid, thank you both so much for being here with me today. I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Cody, for that introduction. And let's get this thing kicked off. We're going to talk today about migrating and modernizing. What that means is that I'm Bill Manning. I'm a solution architect and solution engineering manager for JFrog Americas. And joining me today is...
Hey everyone, my name is Junaid Kapadia and I'm a solutions architect for AWS, focusing on the startup arena. And my career prior to Amazon, I've been involved with IoT, healthcare, nonprofit, and both public-private cloud computing spaces with a special emphasis on DevOps. And it's great to be here today with Bill from JFrog, who's an AWS partner that also has a special focus on DevOps. So Bill, thanks for having me today and looking forward to a little chat.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to this again, working with you on this. And so today's agenda, by the way, we'll do a quick introduction, which we just did, about who we are. And what we'll do is we'll talk next about why we're here. And then we're going to talk about why cloud and why AWS. We're going to also talk about migration benefits and challenges. And also, too, we're going to talk about how JFrog, what I do, I'll explain what we are and how we do things and how we actually can help the SDLC process with AWS. And then we'll talk about some resources you can do to follow up on this towards the end. So I'll let you take us away.
Thank you, Bill. So before we go forward, it's very important to address why cloud or why cloud infrastructure and why are companies moving to the cloud. So to put it simply, customers are moving to a cloud-based infrastructure to increase IT agility, attain near unlimited scalability, improve reliability, and lower costs. So you wrap those tenets with security, but what do all of these buzzwords mean in terms of business value? Well, moving to the cloud allows customers to innovate faster because it allows tech shops to focus their IT resources on developing applications that provide what we like to say differentiated business value instead of spending time managing infrastructure and data centers. So to summarize again, the cloud allows businesses to innovate faster simply by removing the amount of time spent on infrastructure and even application management in the case of managed services. So with the business value addressed, the next question is which cloud provider? And it's important to note that when companies decide which cloud provider to select, they often base their decision on number 1, quality, number 2, performance, number 3, scale of the provider's global data center infrastructure. And companies want to trust their IT assets and IT infrastructure to a provider that has the most advanced systems, security processes, and controls in place to deliver the performance, experience, and business return needed by the largest corporations. And this is where AWS can help. With cloud computing, AWS manages and maintains the technology infrastructure in a secure environment, and businesses access these resources through the internet to develop and run their applications. So why do customers choose AWS? And there are a variety of reasons, but in the interest of time, we'll focus on 6 key tenets. First, we have agility. We said that innovating faster is one of the main business propositions of the cloud. So AWS provides agility to its customers because you can experiment and innovate in rapid fashion by accessing a plethora of different types of services that range from compute to dev tools to databases to serverless and more. Number 2, you only pay for what you use. For example, a retail business may require additional instances during a special sale versus require far fewer instances outside of the sale period. In that case, you pay less off-peak versus peak. Number 3, elasticity. how much will you need to scale during the peak session? During the peak season. You can automate it to both increase the number of instances as required and lower it as required. Fourth, and we mentioned this earlier, as the primary business value, innovate faster. For example, you can spin up a server to test your MVP in a matter of minutes and not worry about the underlying infrastructure through a variety of different AWS computer services. Fifth, go global in minutes refers to the fact that not only does AWS provide a secure cloud, but it provides it across more than 24 geographical regions and with more than 230 plus security features. And last but not least, AWS has more than 175 plus services that can support any cloud workload. So that all allows AWS to provide a broad and deep cloud functionality that addresses multiple use cases. For example, you can leverage servers through EC2 instances, manage databases that are highly available through RDS and Aurora, compliance through our security and compliance tools, build data lakes on Amazon S3, run hybrid architectures, and even provide services that assist with migration. There's plenty more that we can talk about, but the key here is that all services are built upon compute, storage, database, and networking and run up and down the stack, addressing your specific need. So you can use what provides differentiated value to your specific customer business. With that being said, Bill, back over to you.
Thank you so much. So one of the things that, at JFrog, and we're going to go into a little bit on who we are, is the fact that, having, a lot of companies these days, especially over the past 2 years during the lovely pandemic timeframe that we've had, have used this opportunity to decentralize more, right? To also lower costs, OpEx and CapEx, and also to have the ability for, companies to start, removing, like I said, the infrastructure when they realize that, we are distributed now. This is a distributed technology age. We've proven it, especially when it comes down to the way, like I said, the past 2 years have really proven this. And, the thing is that a lot of companies have a lot of questions, like how much is it going to cost me to do this? Why would I do this? And on top of that, do I want to accelerate more? Do I want to have more access to more compute power over time, or a different set of tools that really adheres to the things that I'm trying to do? And the thing is that, JFrog, what we do as a company, in case you're not familiar with who we are, I'll just give you a quick little background on it is, we've been around since 2008. We're called the Universal Binary Repository Management Company. We have our product called ARTIFACTORY. A lot of people know the term ARTIFACTORY. We have over 7,000 customers, 80% of the Fortune 100. We went public back in 2020. We're actually a CNA, so we can find CVEs in terms of development. Really what we are is really we're a DevSecOps enablement tool, right? Making sure that the binaries that you have are consistent. And one of the problems that we see with a lot of customers who come to us to actually approach this subject of migrating to the cloud and accelerating what they do is, how do I get my current organization that might be using a self-hosted solution in data center somewhere, and I've got more geographically located teams, and the data center really isn't cutting it, and I really don't want to open a second data center, but I want to make sure that all my developers are all using the same set of libraries that makes up 85 to 90% of your software. I want to ensure security, and I want to modernize everything I do, and I want a way for me to have my teams, work globally, and have consistency as the baseline. So when we talk about these various aspects of why would companies move from self-hosted to cloud, and a lot of the times it's to reduce cost or increase diversity when it comes to the ability for them to support multiple areas. And we're going to talk today about is when you start talking about what it's going to take you to do this. Of course, there's the side, and people like AWS, as a company, and just the amazing resources they have there to help you kind of figure out what the infrastructure is going to be. You still have other steps you need to take, which is, okay, great, I can move my hosting up there. There's tools there that I can utilize for things. I can get rid of my data center to do these, all these various components, but I still got to build software. I still got to manage software. I still got to make sure that my developers who are working in Bangalore are working fine with my developers in Poland, who are working with my developers in the United States and Australia, right? I want to be able to have it so that I can keep my velocity as an organization and ensure security, have consistency with what I do. So when we talk about this, it's like, there's a huge industry trend of doing this. And we see a lot with hybrid, and then from hybrid to, the cloud offerings. The idea here is speed and agility and the ability to test and distribute, and then operationally when you're doing it, it's, the idea here is it's like, I want to be able to have I want to constantly have my infrastructure refreshed. I mean, you think about the operational cost of refreshing hardware, and it can be terrible, right? It can be very expensive, and that's the reason why companies that do cloud like AWS do the thing. I mean, the other tier two is like, if I move into a new region, I want to be able to select that region and go into it. These are all things we all know about why we want to use the cloud, and why the services like AWS provide that international resiliency you're looking for. But also too, it's way easier to set up things such as like disaster recovery and more resiliency. It's easier to scale out. Operational costs drop, and there's, especially with AWS, there's so many people in the market that finding somebody to do the work for you is pretty efficient. On top of that, you can also go in and start looking at the cost, because what's great is that they have cost calculators, so you can ensure that you retain your budget status when you're going through each quarter that you're doing. And then on top of that, AWS offers some amazing optimization, especially cross-region and stuff like that. And they also have things like CDN. There's all these technologies that you can utilize. And now when we come in, and the way we do things with Artifactory, the thing is we help try to identify and help with the challenges, right? A lot of the challenges people have is, what applications and what systems do I want to move into the cloud first? Am I going to be, looking at the cloud model? Am I looking for infrastructure as code, or platform as a service, or software as a service? There's a lot of different things that you need to keep in mind. When you start deploying your software, right? Are you going to be deploying this publicly, privately? Are you going to still have an on-premise data center and then use the cloud as a way for you to kind of offload and offset eventually with the idea of moving up? There's all these different cloud providers and vendors and consultants that all are in this industry to help you out and help identify and look at the challenges that most companies face, because it is a big change. I mean, the idea of a decentralized system, and the idea of, I don't retain my own set of infrastructure, and I, I'm going to put my faith into somebody else. But at the same time, it allows you to have these thoughts and these plans, and then you also want to be able to ensure that you have business continuity while you're doing this, that your service doesn't get disrupted because you're migrating. You want to be able to do it in a more organic basis, which is usually one of the major things. And the other part about it is like, how to resolve like certain levels of dependencies. What is the cloud migration route? Where does it start? And as Artifactory, and as one of our products, we'll talk about, there's methodologies on how you can use the JFrog platform to enable this, so that you can keep and retain the velocity as an organization. You can make sure that you operationally have continuity. And we will talk about some of the different conduits and methodologies that you can do right now. So in a typical cloud migration route, when you start thinking about it, of course, most companies start with on-premise, right? So if you look to the left-hand side here, you can see that at some point during this, organizations look at what their cost is for OpEx and CapEx, right? So operational cost and capital cost. And they start to determine, they're like, okay, you know what? How do we want to do this? And this is usually a very typical thing that we see with a lot of the customer base I work with. Are we going to refactor everything and rewrite it? And we look at all the deficiencies. Let's replace the CI tooling. Let's go in and implement this kind of level of changes. We want to move over to more of a 12-factor methodology, where we want to have all of our developers develop against, say, Docker images. So this way that, as a best practice, we make sure that the OS they're testing against is the same one in a runtime. Do they want to repurpose something, right? So in other words, they want to move something that they already do maybe into a complete SaaS offering, right? So maybe you're using a tool set, that is currently hosted on premise, but there's, that same company has a SaaS offering. We see this a lot with our customer base, where they're like, we've been using Artifactory and the JFrog platform or products in our data center. We're trying to determine whether right now we want to have it install it in our own VPC and AWS, or maybe what we want to do is, we know you guys also offer your service in AWS as a SaaS offering, and maybe we want to reduce some of the cost that way. Maybe they want to re-platform, right? So just a lift and reshape, right? So the idea here is we're going to keep the same things that we have right now, such as like maybe we're using Jenkins for our CI and some other stuff, and we want to take that, we're going to migrate it into our VPC. And the idea here is that what you're doing is you look for the deficiencies during that period and determine whether or not that's really appropriate. In most cases, we see a lot of replatforming. To be honest, we don't see a lot of the refactoring. Repurchasing we do, but basically replatforming just meaning adjust it to work better in the new VPC, address any deficits we might have, or some of them are just complete lift and shift. We're just going to take everything we do right now inside of our own data centers we're doing, and we're going to go hybrid for a little while, but we want to emulate everything because we've invested a lot of money into learning this technology and to developing the processes we have. The only thing we want to do is we want to reduce our CapEx and our OpEx. So how do you do this? And how do you migrate software development teams, right? Because, hosting applications are one thing. Things like moving like a Jira or a bug database or whatever you have is something, right? Moving those kind of level of components is something. But how do you have it that how do I get my team that might be using a CI server right now currently in my data center, how do I get them to migrate all their stuff up and get used to using something into, say, something like a VPC in AWS? And how do I have it so it's multi-region so that I can also, instead of not just only having this idea of a centralized data center, maybe I have multiple regions set up and I want to be able to replicate and have all that same experience no matter non-dependent on where my actual developers or my locations are geographically. So first I want to talk about the JFrog platform, right? Because we've been talking more about the systemic problems. We had an amazing explanation in the beginning about AWS Virginia and how things work. So let me explain to you what JFrog does, right? If I were to boil it down, and I've mentioned the word consistency many times, but if we were looking at what we're doing here from left to right, and we say that JFrog's DevOps, and now I should really change this slide actually. I'm not going to say DevOps anymore. I've actually removed it from my vocabulary, and I actually say DevSecOps, because when we think about things, one of the things I want you to think in your head is you need to ensure security across the board. So if I were to look at the slide from left to right, we'll start with Artifactory. It's the cornerstone of our company's technology. It's the universal binary repository manager. It manages everything from those third-party transitive dependencies that you pull in for your software, which makes up 80 to 85 to 90% of your software, or those third-party direct and indirect dependencies. But it's also an SDLC enablement tool, meaning you can go ahead and publish the build you create into Artifactory, emulate your software development lifecycle. So you have dev, QA, staging, and production, and be able to promote your binaries through the cycle like you would with multi-tier or 12-factor or any of the multitude of DevSecOps methodologies that are out there in the world. But it's also a giant metadata repository for all the information on how things were done. Right. So in other words, what was the CI process you were using? What binaries were being used? Is there additional QA data that you want to have associated to these objects you build and create so that you have one location that you can query and pull and get all the information on how your software was composed? And if you find something nefarious or something that's, that might cause a problem, how far back does it go? How long will we use it? So it's also an accountability piece of software. To the right of that, we have X-Ray. It's our security vulnerability and license compliance tool. Those 85 to 90% of the software you use, which is someone else's, is usually about 75% of that is old, outdated, and at least has one major vulnerability. Everybody remembers about a month and a half ago the Log4j issue, right? Huge issue. A potential threat was actually detected. It's a super used one across the board, a library that's used in most projects, and it was nefarious, right? There was something wrong with it. There was a really, if you don't know what it is, go read up on it. It's a very awesome, crazy issue. But the big thing was like SolarWinds, right? Back in 2020, 18,000 worldwide customers got hit by this attack. It was a very elegant and sophisticated attack. But all these things I'm telling you on all these kind of level of attacks is at the actual software supply chain level. There was a 650% increase in software supply chain attacks alone in 2021. This allows you to also make sure that you're safe and secure and compliant. It does everything from shift left at the developer level with our CLI tool and IDEs. You can bake it into your CI process with one of the many plugins we have or the APIs you can use. You can also have it all the way down to the delivery process of your software, even down to when you're pushing this off into Kubernetes. We're going to be introducing actually a live Kubernetes for, say, EKS monitoring service to say, hey, we found a binary that you brought in as a developer. We found it all the way down to your production and it's running right now. To the right of that, we have distribution and connect. Distribution is our distribution component. So say you are building software, you could put lightweight immutable edge nodes. They're actually the small versions of Artifactory into one of the many regions that AWS offers. And it gives you the ability to publish your software out to those locations and then deploy them into things like EKS and whatnot. It can also be used as a way to actually deliver software to your customers too. We have a SaaS offering that allows you to actually distribute software the way you need to your customer base. Below that, we have JFrog Connect. So JFrog Connect is our IoT platform. Below that, we actually have our pipelines products, our CI, CD, and CI orchestration tool built for scale, no plugins, all API access to integrations, also as code, so it's all built in YAML, and it's all highly temporizable. It can be used for your CI process to extend your CI process with things like blue-green testing and approvals. It also can be used as a CD, so a way to wrap up the software you're doing as a thing called a immutable edge node release bundle, which is digitally side packaged, so you can package up your Helm charts and your Docker images and publish them down to the edge. You can also use it as a way to orchestrate the various CI jobs you're doing. At the top, we have mission control. It's a way to have a holistic view of how your system is operating. And then you have things like Insight. It's an open metric standard. You can connect to things like Splunk, Prometheus, Grafana, or any other monitoring tools you might have. But what I'm trying to instill in you here is that when you use the JFrog platform, it enables a level of consistency and security across your entire organization, from the developer all the way down to the deployment, whether it's a device, whether it's another region where you're deploying a web service, whether you're sharing, but also too, our platform has been designed so you can install Artifactory in any way you want in another VPC. So you could have multiple VPCs working together. You could have a VPC and have your own data center. You can even go cross-cloud if you wanted to, cloud provider. Right? That's another discussion that we get with a lot of companies is that you might choose more than one cloud provider, but we allow you to have the same set of tooling, non-dependent on where you've deployed us. So the thing is that a lot of companies are going through these times here where they go, okay, I've been doing this on my own data center forever. And now we have a mandate to say, okay, we become less decentralized or become more diverse in our geolocations. You know what? We actually are going to be expanding to, or any of the multitude of regions on why you're going to start moving into the cloud. Like I said, maybe it was a cargo occulting thing where your CIO got back and said, we're moving to cloud because it's going to save us millions of dollars every year and we can hire more people to maintain it. But the thing is, it'll make our life easier, down to, hey, you know what? We actually decided that we're not going to have our own operational costs anymore. It's way too expensive. Let's actually invest the money in our people and hire more people, and we'll use web services. But what we're going to talk about today is how to use our product, JFrog Artifactory, and helping you actually migrate and keep that level of consistency, allow you to have that business continuity in controlling and building your software. So one of the things is that when you start to think about the way things are, especially when it comes to, say, something like the Artifactory product or the JFrog platform in general, is that there's different methods of moving your stuff, and you always need to start with, of course, our platform to get this actually motioning. Because one of the key factors here is that our platform is designed for global scale. As I mentioned, we have so many customers that use us in so many different ways. We have customers pushing petabytes of data through our software at any given moment continually during the day. But making sure that when you're migrating those tool sets from your self-hosted or from one data center to another, or from one VPC to another, or you're expanding into VPCs, we offer methodologies for you to go in and enable sharing of those binaries, whether it's the third-party transit dependencies you have, all the way down to the software builds you produce, Docker images, Helm charts, you name it. We support over 30 package types directly out of the box. So when you're looking at this, we have things called, we have replication. And we'll talk about replication, what that means, and the various types. You can also use, if say you're using Artifactory, you can also use our import export. You can use our API, or you can use our JFrog CLI tool to do it. You can also use externalized methods such as DB export or rsync. But the thing is that migrating up into the cloud isn't that terrible. It's not that hard. And the thing is making sure that the things that you've been using all along inside of your development organization retain true when you move up into, say, a cloud, or you've gone more hybrid. So before you plan the migration, you should know a couple of things. So first of all, of course, you're going to go ahead and plan your migration. Am I moving everything? Am I going to go ahead and am I going to reorganize the way I've actually done my storage and my organizations over time? What IDP am I using, right? Look at all the pieces and components that your current system relies on before you migrate up. Does it have the equivalent as a service, or am I going to be moving the software itself up? Also, clean up all the stuff that you're doing. So in other words, we actually at JFrog, we actually have a bunch of documentation on how to clear up and clean up the actual Artifactory instance so you're not moving garbage. What if some of the stuff hasn't been used in 8 to 9 months? Because one of the things you're going to want to do is also, when you guys are using our product, is design the process that you have, right, your SDLC, and emulate it inside of our product. So this way you have things like dev, QA, staging, and production in terms of repositories and how you store the binaries. If you want more information about our products, by the way, we have tons of videos on YouTube. I do a lot of speaking about this. We can also set up a time. You could also ping us. We have a place to set up a call. My team and I can have a call with you and walk you through these things. But the thing is that you're gonna want to clean up the stuff that you're doing. Remove the stuff you don't want to transport. Figure that out. And then, of course, you're going to want to back everything up after you've cleaned it, right? You want to make sure that you're not losing anything. And we have various kind of, for Artifactory, there are various methods to do that, and we'll discuss some of those too. So the first thing is multi-site replication and optimization. As I stated before, the idea here is that you can utilize us no matter where you're hosting us. It could be, like I said, multiple cloud providers, multiple VPCs. It could be, globally dispersed. It could be your own data center. It could be someone else's data center. It doesn't make a difference. We've actually designed this to sit back and go, okay, this is what we're doing as an org. And let's design this to match everything that we're doing. So we might have 5 geographic locations. Well, let's set up 5 Artifactory instances, 1 in each location. And then let's sit down and on a per repository or per work or per project basis, you can determine the best way, because you can do either full replication of everything that you're doing. But in most cases, you're only going to want to replicate the binaries that matter, right? Maybe it's only QA, maybe it's production. Maybe it's dev and, then there's centralized production repositories. The thing is, you also need to determine, is this going to be star-based or mesh-based, which is one of the things where maybe one dictates to many, or maybe they're all equal opportunity. Do you want to have push or pull based replication? Our replication process is actually built on the way we store our binaries. In our product, we store our binaries based on a checksum. So we take a binary, we tear it apart, we look at the insides, we algorithmically come up with a SHA-256 checksum. We store the binaries that way, and then we reference it via metadata. Meaning we don't duplicate binaries, we save space. It also means that when we are replicating, we actually have it set up so that the source and the target query each other, and the source says, here's everything I want to send you, and the target says, that's great, I have 90% of that, why don't you just send me the delta? But also, too, you're going to want to figure out things like, do I need this real time no matter where I am globally dependent, or can I do this in offset hours where I might want to do this kind of thing? When I do pull and push replication, I might want to say, I want event-based pull because the place that's pulling these binaries has extremely low bandwidth and inconsistent downloads and whatnot. And we all know that it's easier to download than it is to upload. Also, too, you're going to want to discuss security aspects. How tight down is this system? You're going to discuss things like RBAC, role-based access controls. Who has access to the various types of repositories? Where a development repository, which is being accessed by developers, might have a lot of freedom behind it. Where I go over to QA and have a QA repository where I'm storing my builds that I want tested. I might want read-only so I can pull them down and read them. But I also want to go and publish my metadata results back in. And as I also said, What's great is in some cases, though, you actually might be just deploying a service where you may not want to replicate between locations, or you might want to replicate between locations, but you want to separate your manufacturing from your production level live environments. And that's where actually our distribution side comes in, because this is another conduit. You could even have hybrid, where you can still retain your data center where maybe you're doing all your builds, but set up an Artifactory instance inside of AWS, replicate your binaries from your self-hosted solution, the production level, up into the one in AWS, pull them together, maybe set up a whole bunch of our edge nodes in different regions around the world, and then pull those binaries, package them up into the release bundle I discussed before, and then send it out to those locations and deploy it. Now I've come up with a way to distribute my software more rapidly. So this is more the optimization side. And when we talk about replication, as I mentioned before, you might have two sites here, like location A and location B. A push-based replication means location A would push to location B. This would be an event-based one, meaning that anytime something is uploaded into location A, it's immediately sent over to location B. Or it might be pull replication, where the A and B are communicating. A says, I need you to download into you some of these files that I have. So this is more along the lines of the event-based style replication. And also, too, by the way, both of these can also be done in cron or can also be done on demand. But the idea here is that if you have low latency or high, low bandwidth, you might want to have event-based pull, where the remote system pulls down the binaries for usage. Or you might have more than one location. It might even be a combination. You might have one location on site. You might have one location, maybe 3 or 4 regions in the cloud. And this is where you can get into the ideas of maybe you have it so that the local location A, which might be your self-hosted, publishes out to say B, C, and D, which might be in different regions globally in AWS in their own VPC. Or you could say that, I've got on-premise and I've got 3 locations in the cloud, and I want to make sure that they all have the same level of binaries that are actually being distributed among them. So you have mesh or star-based topology. And then we've also made it even easier. So when you start, when you have, say, 2 locations, using our repository replication method is pretty straightforward. You set up, you actually go into our user interface. You set one up relationship to the other relationship, and it's through as a standard interface, and it's fine. It's very easy to do. We created a thing called federated repositories. And the reason why we created federated repositories is when you start getting into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we even have customers with 30 locations. It's much easier to do it with our federated repositories. So what this does is there's a simple UI. You pick the repository you want, you select locations, and it brings up the list of other locations of Artifactory, no matter where they are, because they're all communicating with each other. You set up a circle of trust, so it's also a trust relationship. And then you select those, and you say, hey, by the way, I want to go in, and I want to create the location that I'm storing in my one instance. I want to create it in 7 other locations, and I want to do it with a couple of button clicks. And it will automatically create the repositories in those other locations. So this way you can replicate the binaries out more effectively. So we went from being like, a 1-to-1 relationship to a 1-to-many, which we see more. So what we did is we actually wrapped up the processes of being able to create this replication model into a series of simple button clicks, which makes it easier. Now, by the way, you can also do it via the API, and you can also do it via our CLI. You can also use our import-export method. Inside of your Artifactory, say you're moving from a self-hosted into a cloud instance. One of the things you could do is you could export all the information, all the binaries, all the metadata, and then transport that in one big blob up into your AWS instance and just cut over, right? So it can be done either at the system level or the repository level. It can have all the information on your configuration, all your security information. At the same time, you can also weed it down. You can write filtering processes to make, just say migrate all I want. This comes back to the ideas that we talked about before, right? The idea here is that we can go in and figure out what do we really want to migrate up. And this is another way to do it. And this is kind of like a peel your band-aid off, where replication is more, hey, we're not sure on the time frame, or we're going to stay hybrid, or all right, well, we have 8 months to migrate over. This is a way to slow do it. And the import-export side is like, hey, we have actually a window this weekend. We're doing it this weekend. We're moving everything over. Another way to do this too, and this is actually behind the scenes, is that when we are doing the system export, you can export everything except for the metadata. You can go in and say, I just want to do all the, the repositories where I store all my third-party transitive dependencies and data, right? There's other ways to do this. And when it comes to import, now this is always an interesting one. You can either do the import, through the user interface, and this will be like, okay, it's very similar to what we're doing in AWS versus what we were doing on premise, but these are just easy ways to do it. So you can use our export method and our import method as a rapid way to do this. Say, like I said, this is like more the peel the Band-Aid off. We've been doing this for a while. We want to go ahead and we want to make sure that we can do this over the weekend. We just make it easier. I prefer, to be honest, and I'm just going to be very honest here, I prefer for most companies to use the replication method because it means that you're not rushing, you're not missing things, you're not, you're able to also have an extra set of resiliency towards it. You can use it as a failover. There's a lot of different things you can do. But you don't have to replicate using our method either, right? You don't have to use our replication method, though it is preferred, because you can also, I'm missing a slide. That's okay, I'll talk through it. But the thing is that there's other ways to do this too. One of the other ways you can do is you can use some of the other export and tool features actually that, such as like rsync or database sync and things like that. But now I'm gonna go hop over to have Janine actually talk about AWS tools for migration.
Thanks, Bill. So just as you can use JFrog tools to perform migrations, right, tools and techniques, you can also use a variety of different AWS services. And this is a list of a few of the services, not necessarily exhaustive. The first one over here is the AWS Application Migration Service. And what it allows you to do is basically you can quickly realize the benefits of migrating applications to the cloud without changes and with minimal downtime. Or you can use the AWS Migration Hub, which provides you a single location to track the progress of application migrations that you're performing across multiple AWS environments and through different partner solutions. You can leverage the AWS Application Discovery Service, which basically helps enterprise customers plan migration projects by gathering information about their on-premise data centers. The AWS Database Migration Service, as the name says, it will help you migrate your databases to AWS easily and securely, removing a lot of the overhead that you would have to do on your own. You've got Server Migration Service, and that's an agentless service, which makes it easier and faster for you to migrate thousands of on-premise workloads directly onto AWS. You even have something known as the AWS Snow family, and this is a very unique product where it allows customers to run operations within non-data center environments and in locations where there's a lack of consistent network connectivity. So for example, if you have tons of data that you want to move from one location to another, we can ship a Snow device to you. You can load your data over there and then send it back to us, and we'll upload it onto S3 or the equivalent service that you need it on. You also have AWS Data Sync, and that's basically a secure online service that automates and accelerates the moving of data between your on-premise environment and different AWS storage services. And it supports protocols such as NFS, SMB, HDFS, among others. And then finally, you also have the AWS Transfer Family. So it basically provides you a fully managed support mechanism for file transfers directly into and out of Amazon S3 or Amazon EFS. And it actually has support for SFTP, FTPS, FTP, and basically the transfer family will help you seamlessly migrate your file transfer workloads to AWS by integrating with your existing authentication systems. And it also provides you DNS routing through Amazon Route 53. So nothing changes for your customers or your partners and their applications. Now, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but it gives you an idea that you can leverage either JFrog tools, or you can use AWS tools, or you can use both of them together. And really the choice comes down to you. And that also goes back to the core value of why the cloud allows you to improve your efficiency and allows you to innovate faster. With that being said, Bill, back over to you.
Excellent. So let's talk about, don't hit the microphone. Let's talk about various resources that are available for you to go through this, right? So first of all, JFrog and AWS have an amazing relationship as partners. customers, right? So there's lots of different things that we do. So first of all, in terms of technology stack, we support over 30 package types with our products natively, right? We're also about to introduce just 2 new things. As you know, we're introducing Terraform as a repository type, and we've also been working with Apple, and so we're going to be releasing our Swift support actually very soon. We already have CocoaPods, but we'll be doing that. But we have all the various things for installer-wise, right? So when you're installing this in AWS, you can use Kubernetes with EKS, you use Terraform, Ansible, Docker, anything like that. You have our JFrog Academy. Our JFrog Academy is a free academy that you can utilize at any point. Just type in JFrog Academy, and it has courses from everything from DevOps engineers to security engineers to administrators, you name it. There's also a bunch of workshops that we've done with AWS, and so those will be available. 2, we also have the webinars from JFrog that, I'm actually one of the people who present a lot of the time. And we also do a lot of live functions such as like DevOps days, right? And then below, we also have all the other stuff too. We also have an offering. So by the way, if you are interested in looking at our solution, it's in the AWS Marketplace. You can also look at the quick start guides that we've also put up on AWS for you. And then also too, we also have the Cloud Foundation stuff, right? So we've actually, just so you know, like I said, we're a company that's like heavily invested in cloud native ourselves. We're actually governance board members of the Cloud Native Foundation. Anytime you use Helm, you can actually thank one of our employees. He's actually the creator of Helm. And the thing is that all these resources are readily available. There's a huge community behind what we do on both sides, between AWS and JFrog itself. But really what it comes down to is it's up to you guys, right? It's up to you how you want to do this. You have the tools. We have all this information available for you. And there's some best practices on what you can do on how to utilize this. But feel free at any time to reach out to AWS, reach out to JFrog to have these kind of level of discussions, because this is a very common thing. You're not alone in this migration path. I mean, there's a reason why we're doing this discussion, because it's such a hot topic. But also, too, you can go out and look at everything that we're doing now, by the way, and look at the marketplace and all that. We have free offerings for JFrog that you can actually run on it for a period of time. We also have a free tier if you want to kind of kick the tires and test drive, the way we do things. But really what it comes down to is we're trying to help you with the actual enablement, right? You have a very interesting task. Moving from one to the other, right? Moving now into AWS because maybe the tooling's better, or lots of multitudes of different things that AWS does so well. And what we have here is a lot of the tooling that for you to make it so that your organization can migrate and move while still retaining continuity and also, things like velocity without having vulnerability and other things too. So if you want, by the way, you can go into the marketplace. You can sign up for a 30-day trial of our platform. There's also, you just type in JFrog, ARTIFACTORY. You'll see many links around that, or AWS and ARTIFACTORY. There's tons out there. There's tons of ways to do this, but you can get out there and try today. If you want a way to manage everything you do, all the builds, all the metadata, all the access controls, globally diverse organizations, publishing into production level environments, you name it, we actually have a lot of information. And the thing is that, Janine and I will actually probably be doing another talk again. But one of the things I want you to also keep in mind is that all this responsibility that you have, there are tools, there are methodologies to do this. There are ways for you to enable and ensure success. Just look for the answers. They're all out there. And, the thing is that, today we talked about AWS and JFrog and we can help you. Please feel free to reach out to myself or Janine and also to any of the ones of our company. Would love to have a discussion around this, but just to let you know, everything that we showed today is readily available, and everything that we talked about, you should be able to grab at any point. And there's plenty of stuff out there on educating yourselves. And remember, security, security, security. I'll always say security. But the thing is that be safe, everybody. Be well. And Janine, do you have anything you want to add?
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Bill, for having us. And looking forward to working with our customers.
Excellent. Me too. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody be safe and be well. And Cody, take us out, buddy.
I'm sorry, I was just told I was on mute. Thank you so much, Bill. So Bill and Junaid, thank you so much for taking the time to join our discussion today and to share your expertise. I'd like to remind our audience that the session was recorded. So following this panel, you'll receive an email with a link to access the on-demand. You'll also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars. We do have 4 gift cards to give away for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. Our first winner is Kevin W. Our second winner is Mohammed B. Our third winner is Rasham D. And our fourth and final winner is Bernice G. So keep an eye on your inbox to claim that gift card. And if you don't see an email, just check your spam folder. So Bill and Janine, thank you so much for being here with us today. And it looks like Bill took care of all of our questions today in the chat. So I really appreciate all of the questions that we got today. And he was glad he was able to address all of those so we could wrap up. Bill, do you have anything you'd like to say before we close out shop today?
No, I just want to thank everybody for coming and joining today. If you have any questions or stuff like that, please feel free to reach out. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much, Cody, for hosting this. Truly appreciate it. You're an awesome dude. And like I said, if you guys have any questions or problems, you can reach out to me through JFrog. You go to JFrog Twitter. You can send us a message. Or I'm William Manning at Twitter also. But please go check out the JFrog website and be more than happy to arrange a discussion or any talk at any time. And I'm available.
Awesome. I'd like to thank JFrog and AWS for sponsoring today's webinar. And my final thanks goes to you, our viewers. I really appreciate you being here for the full duration of today's webinar. Please take a minute to fill out our post-webinar survey, and we hope to see you at an upcoming Techstrong Learning event. This is Cody J. Brown signing off. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you, Bill.
Be safe, be well, everyone. Cheers.